How do some places on Earth teem with life, while others host only a handful of species? This question has fascinated ecologists for decades. Understanding the patterns and mechanisms behind species diversity is not just an academic pursuit, it's crucial for making informed decisions about conservation and ecosystem management. Scientists have documented many diversity patterns, but the underlying reasons for these patterns remain elusive. By unraveling these mysteries, we can better protect the intricate web of life that sustains our planet. In this video, we'll explore the core ideas, models, and real-world implications of how ecological niches and species interactions maintain diversity. The dominant approach in community ecology is to look at how species interact. The competitive exclusion principle suggests that only species with sufficiently different ecologies can coexist stably. Yet, nature often surprises us with communities of seemingly similar species living together. This contradiction has led to new theories and models. Unlike the neutral theory, propose that many species are functionally identical and that diversity is maintained by random processes like speciation and immigration. Others stick to the idea that subtle differences between species, how they use resources or interact with enemies, are key to coexistence. These perspectives set the stage for our deeper dive into the mechanisms of diversity maintenance. Neutral theory has been successful in predicting some diversity patterns, especially in highly diverse communities. However, it falls short in many cases and cannot explain the full range of observed diversity. Its predictions are limited, and it often fails to account for the differential effects of environmental change on different species. This has led ecologists to seek more nuanced explanations that consider both random processes and the unique traits of each species. The ongoing debate between neutral and niche-based theories highlights the complexity of nature and the need for multiple perspectives to understand biodiversity. Additional approaches to diversity maintenance focus on how similar species exploit resources differently. These differences, even if subtle, can allow species to coexist by reducing direct competition. Recent developments emphasize that relationships with natural enemies, like predators or parasites, can be just as important as resource use. The physical environment also plays a significant role, as its structure can influence which species can live together. By examining these factors, ecologists gain a clearer picture of the mechanisms that allow multiple species to persist in the same area. Testing hypotheses about how diversity is maintained in nature is challenging. Field data are often limited, and experimental manipulations can be difficult or even impossible. Despite these obstacles, advances in quantifying coexistence mechanisms have led to more definitive tests. By focusing on measurable differences in how species interact and respond to their environment, researchers are making progress in understanding the rules that govern biodiversity. These insights are essential for developing effective conservation strategies. Even though we don't fully understand all the mechanisms behind diversity maintenance, some general advice for conservation is clear. Species should not be managed in isolation. Improving conditions for one group of species can inadvertently harm others. Maintaining the structure of food webs, the physical environment, disturbance regimes, and spatial connectivity are all supported by our current understanding. These principles guide practical conservation efforts and help ensure the resilience of ecosystems. Key concept in understanding species interactions is average fitness. In ecology, fitness isn't just about individual survival or reproduction, it's about how well a species as a whole is adapted to its environment compared to others. This relative fitness determines which species can dominate or coexist. If one species is much better adapted, it may outcompete others. But when fitness differences are small, coexistence becomes possible, especially if species use resources differently or have different vulnerabilities to enemies. Make these ideas concrete. Ecologists use models like the MacArthur Consumer Resource Model. This model describes how a group of animal species or a guild consumes shared resources. It helps quantify each species' ability to harvest resources, their maintenance requirements, and their sensitivity to resource changes. By comparing these factors, the model predicts which species will persist and how they interact. This framework has been instrumental in shaping our understanding of resource partitioning and coexistence. The MacArthur model, a species' fitness is determined by three main factors: its ability to harvest resources, its maintenance requirement, the minimum resources needed to survive, and its sensitivity to resource availability. The net maximum harvesting rate, how much a species can gather beyond its basic needs, divided by its sensitivity, gives its average fitness. This measure helps rank species by their overall adaptation and predicts their chances of persisting in competition with others. MacArthur model also introduces competition coefficients, which measure how much one species affects another's growth compared to its own. These coefficients are linked to the feedback loops in the food web, how changes in one species ripple through resources and back. When resource dynamics are fast, the model simplifies to the classic Lotka-Volterra competition equations, making it easier to analyze the balance between interspecific and intraspecific competition. Crucial concept is niche overlap, represented by the parameter ρ. This value ranges from 0 no overlap to 1 complete overlap. The more two species overlap in resource use, the more similar their niches and the harder it is for them to coexist unless their average fitnesses are nearly identical. If overlap is low, even species with different fitness levels can coexist. This relationship between fitness ratios and niche overlap is central to understanding how diversity is maintained. Imagine two species with different patterns of resource use. If their consumption curves overlap only partially, they can tolerate greater differences in average fitness and still coexist. But if their resource use is nearly identical, only very similar fitness levels will allow both to persist. This visualization helps clarify why some communities are more diverse than others and how subtle differences can make a big impact. Feedback loops are at the heart of coexistence. When species differ in how they use resources, their population changes create separate feedbacks that can stabilize coexistence. If feedback loops are too similar, competition intensifies and one species may exclude the other. By measuring the separation of these loops, ecologists can predict the conditions under which diversity is maintained. Stable coexistence means that if a species' population drops, it can recover. In the MacArthur model, this happens when fitness and niche overlap conditions are met. Neutral models, by contrast, assume all species are identical in fitness and niche, leading to a delicate balance where any disturbance can tip the scales. Real ecosystems often fall somewhere in between, with both stabilizing and neutral processes at play. Lottery model is a vivid example of fluctuation-dependent coexistence. In environments that change over time, species may take turns thriving, with each recovering from low density when conditions favor them. This dynamic, illustrated by simulations, shows how temporal variation can stabilize diversity, even when competition is intense. Such models highlight the importance of environmental variability in maintaining species richness. Neutral models can reproduce some observed patterns, like the distribution of common and rare species in diverse communities. However, they require additional assumptions such as demographic randomness and ongoing speciation or immigration to match real-world data. Their inability to predict how environmental changes affect different species limits their usefulness for conservation and management. While neutral models offer mathematical simplicity, they don't capture the full complexity of ecological communities. Models that account for differences between species can also reproduce many diversity patterns, but with greater predictive power. This realization has shifted the focus back to understanding the unique traits and interactions that shape each community. Species don't just interact through resources, they also share predators. Feedback loops through predators, known as apparent competition, can have effects similar to resource competition. If predators focus on one species, they can prevent it from dominating, allowing others to persist. This expanded view of niches includes both resource use and susceptibility to enemies, broadening our understanding of coexistence. Keystone species idea illustrates how predators can maintain diversity. By preying on the most competitive species, predators increase its mortality and resource requirements, lowering its fitness relative to others. This can tip the balance in favor of coexistence. However, the full story involves complex feedbacks, as predator populations also respond to changes in prey abundance. Parent competition occurs when two species share a predator. An increase in one prey species can boost predator numbers, increasing pressure on the other prey. This indirect interaction can be just as important as direct competition for resources. By considering both types of feedback, ecologists gain a more complete picture of the forces shaping community structure. Niche concept now includes not only how species use resources, but also how they interact with predators and other enemies. The overlap measure rho is extended to account for both resource and predator overlap. When species differ in their sensitivity to resources or predators, rho decreases, promoting coexistence. This integrated view helps explain the rich tapestry of interactions in natural communities. The resources or predators are more important for coexistence depends on their relative strengths. If resource competition is weak but apparent competition is strong, differences in predator relationship become crucial. Conversely, if resource competition dominates, resource partitioning is key. The overlap measure rho captures these dynamics, weighting the importance of each factor based on their ecological impact. Predator-prey relationships can be surprisingly complex. Predators may specialize on certain prey or switch targets based on abundance. Diseases and parasites also act as natural enemies, further diversifying the ways species interact. These complexities mean that both resources and enemies can define distinct niches, shaping the structure and diversity of communities. Trade-offs between resource sensitivity and predator susceptibility can further lower niche overlap, making coexistence more likely. For example, a species that is highly efficient at using resources but vulnerable to predators may coexist with a species that is less efficient but better defended. These trade-offs add another layer of complexity to the coexistence puzzle. Natural environments are rarely constant. Variation in time and space, such as changing seasons, weather, or habitat types, creates new opportunities for species to distinguish their niches. Theoretical and empirical studies show that spatial and temporal variation can separate feedback loops, allowing more species to coexist. This perspective challenges the idea that only equilibrium conditions matter for diversity. Species favor different habitats, and resources are consumed and regenerated locally. Each habitat acts as a separate feedback loop. This separation can promote coexistence by reducing direct competition. Predators, however, often range more widely, making feedback separation less likely. Still, under certain conditions, spatial variation can stabilize diversity even in the presence of shared enemies. Temporal variation, such as year-to-year changes in weather, can also separate niches. If different species are favored in different years, their populations can recover from low points when conditions shift in their favor. This dynamic is especially important in environments with frequent disturbances or unpredictable climates. Advanced niche theory uses the concept of covariance between environment and competition to assess how spatial and temporal variation separate niches. By measuring how feedback loops change with environmental conditions, researchers can test hypotheses about diversity maintenance. These techniques are opening new avenues for understanding and managing biodiversity. While it's difficult to pinpoint which diversity maintenance mechanisms apply in every system, some general conservation strategies emerge. Models like MacArthur's provide a framework for understanding how changes in the environment affect different species. Recognizing that species are interconnected means that management actions must consider indirect effects, not just direct impacts on target species. Invasive species often succeed because they have higher fitness values in their new environments. This can be due to lower susceptibility to enemies, better resource harvesting, or reduced sensitivity to competition. When an invader's fitness increases, it can depress native species, sometimes driving them extinct. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for managing invasions and protecting native biodiversity. Changes in resource supply can shift the balance between species. Increasing the carrying capacity of a resource benefits the species that relies on it, raising its fitness and competitive ability. This can disadvantage other species, potentially leading to their decline. These effects are most visible with invasive species, but also occur among natives when environmental changes favor some over others. Increasing the availability of a specific habitat type can have similar effects to increasing resource supply. A species that benefits from the new habitat may increase in abundance, exerting greater competitive pressure on others. This highlights the importance of considering habitat diversity and connectivity in conservation planning. Climate change alters patterns of temporal variation, potentially shifting the relative fitness of species. For example, desert annual plants may coexist because different species are favored in different years. If climate change makes conditions consistently better for some species, others may decline. Changes in disturbance regimes, such as fire frequency, can have similar impacts by altering the spatio-temporal environment. Some ecosystems rely on disturbance for coexistence. Species may be adapted to survive or even benefit from periodic changes, such as fires or floods. However, changes in the frequency or intensity of these events can disrupt established balances, making systems sensitive to environmental shifts. Life history traits like dormancy or dispersal to refuge habitats can buffer species against these changes. Maintaining landscape connectivity is vital for species that rely on dispersal to survive environmental changes. Corridors that link habitats allow species to move in response to disturbances, increasing their chances of persistence. This principle is especially important in fragmented landscapes and under changing climate conditions. Structure of food webs, who eats whom, plays a central role in diversity maintenance. Loss of top predators can have cascading effects throughout the ecosystem, altering the balance between species at all levels. Conservation efforts must consider not just the persistence of individual species, but the maintenance of their ecological roles and interactions. Decline or removal of large predators can trigger ecosystem-wide changes, sometimes leading to the collapse of prey populations or shifts in vegetation. These trophic cascades underscore the importance of maintaining the full complement of species in an ecosystem, not just the most visible or charismatic ones. Conservation often focuses on the persistence of species, but it's equally important to maintain their ecological roles. For example, restoring wolves to Yellowstone National Park is not just about bringing back the species, but about restoring their role as top predators and the effects they have on the entire ecosystem. This holistic view is essential for effective biodiversity management. Trophic cascades are increasingly observed in marine and terrestrial systems as large predators are lost. These changes can affect everything from plant diversity to nutrient cycling. Theoretical and empirical studies confirm that the loss of one trophic level can undermine the diversity maintenance roles of others, with far-reaching consequences for ecosystem health. Sum up: species should not be managed in isolation. Improving conditions for one group can harm others. Maintaining trophic structure, physical environmental structure, disturbance regimes, and spatial connectivity are all essential for sustaining biodiversity. These principles are grounded in both theory and observation, providing a solid foundation for conservation and management. Though much remains to be discovered about the mechanisms of diversity maintenance, the progress made so far offers valuable guidance. By integrating models, empirical data, and practical experience, ecologists and conservationists can make more informed decisions. The ongoing challenge is to apply these insights in a rapidly changing world, where human activities continue to reshape ecosystems. Continued research and collaboration across disciplines are essential for advancing our understanding of ecological niches and diversity maintenance. By sharing knowledge and working together, scientists can develop new models, test hypotheses, and refine conservation strategies. This collaborative spirit is key to tackling the complex challenges facing biodiversity today. For practitioners, the message is clear: consider the whole ecosystem, not just individual species. Actions that benefit one group may have unintended consequences for others. Maintaining diversity requires attention to food webs, habitat structure, disturbance regimes, and connectivity. By following these guidelines, we can better safeguard the rich tapestry of life on Earth. Study of ecological niches and diversity maintenance is an ongoing journey. Each discovery leads to new questions and challenges. As we continue to explore the complexity of nature, our understanding deepens and our ability to protect biodiversity grows. The future of conservation depends on our willingness to learn, adapt, and act with foresight. In conclusion, ecological niches and the mechanisms that maintain diversity are central to understanding and conserving life on Earth. By appreciating the interplay between species, resources, enemies, and the environment, we can make better decisions for the future. Let's continue to value and protect the diversity that makes our planet unique.